Hello.
Hi, Alia. Good to see you.
Nice to see you. So audio, video, okay?
Yep. Perfect.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah. People are coming in, so that's great. Joe. See you, colleagues.
While we waited, a woman was locked down with her abuser.
While we waited, a girl was forced out of school.
While we waited, a mother fed her children, not herself.
In the year the world stopped,
Women's rights were reversed, undoing years of progress. Just like that.
As the world begins to turn again,
we must begin to act.
For the 1 in 3 women who have experienced violence in their lifetime.
For the 47 million more women being pushed into extreme poverty because of the pandemic.
For the 50% of the population
who deserve 50% of the power.
This year, leaders and changemakers will meet at the Generation Equality Forum.
A forum to build up and strengthen women's rights for generations to come.
Let's show that we're standing up
so equality can step forward.
And in a year where it's virtually impossible to meet,
we'll meet
virtually.
Don't wait. It's time to act for equal.
Dear participants, dear panelists, welcome. A very warm welcome to all of you to this regional feminist solidarity action in Central Asia, the Balkans and Eastern Europe, reversing the rollback, action, advancing feminist action, a conversation organized by UN Women Europe and Central Asia Regional Office and Women Engaged for a Common Future. I'm Shehnaz Klimaz-Bahçeci from the Women's Major Group, and I'll be facilitating the conversation today. It's wonderful to be with all of you. Before we start, please allow me to remind you that we'll have translation into Russian, which you can select from the globe sign at the bottom of your screens on the black ribbon you can find in your Zoom program. You can also turn on closed captions if you need it. And we will also be recording the meeting, this inspiring conversation with all of you. Moreover, we also hope that this can be a safe feminist space for all our participants and panelists, and therefore we deeply appreciate your support on this throughout the event. You're welcome and in fact encouraged to share your comments through the chat and your questions through the Q&A box, again, that you can find on the bottom of your screens. And we'll be directing the questions that you pose to our panelists later in our agenda. In our event today, we'll build upon last year's regional Beijing 25 actions, which have been, let's say, transformed into the virtual space due to the pandemic we've all been through and its effects that we've heard in the video we've just watched together. We will together think about feminist action and priorities from across Central Asia, Western Balkans, and Eastern European regions as we head towards the second part of the Generation Equality Forum, Paris, that will take place between June 30th and July 2nd. and it's following Action Coalition's process that will take up the next 4 years. We'll especially focus on the theme of feminist movement building from different perspectives. We have amazing panelists from art, activism, and policymaking spheres. And here we really want to make meaningful connections. Our aim is to make meaningful connections for you to feel eager to engage with the Generation Equality Forums and its action coalitions. This will be a conversation, this will be a mobilizing space. So please don't hesitate to contact us or others after our conversation today. And we'll also have a 30-minute networking session after our conversation. So without further ado, please allow me to introduce you our incredible and inspiring panel of speakers today. Nino Tisalasani is a Georgian member of Parliament. She's the chairperson of the Gender Equality Council of the Parliament. She's a strong advocate for increasing the political representation of women and says politics belong to women too, and therefore increasing their representation is directly related to the development of the country as well. We have Ali Al-Yassir with us, the UN Women Regional Director for Europe and Central Asia and representative to Turkey since September 2018. She has been working with UNIFEM UN Women since 1997. She previously worked as the UN Women Special Representative in the occupied Palestinian territory, managing a complex portfolio of programs and projects on gender equality and women's empowerment. Zenia Udod is a media and communications specialist for Fem Agora Central Asia. She's a professional journalist, public relations and media expert, editor and translator. In 2018, she obtained a master's degree from Nazarbayev University with her research focused on contemporary Kazakhstani feminisms. Her research introduced her to the broader Central Asian feminist community, and now she's proud to be a member of one of its committed initiatives. While we'll hear from our panelists a bit later, please allow me to introduce, last but not least, Sultana, who is with us, a feminist and humanist artist and musician from Turkey, who since the early 2000s have been using her music and her words to showcase the challenges and inequalities faced by women everywhere and the hypocrisy of patriarchy. Now I'd like to give the floor to Sultana to share with us her poems, her amazing song, Whatever We Are, and her story beyond her art. Thank you so much for joining us, Sultana. This is such a pleasure, and the floor is yours, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Can you hear? Okay, great. Well, it's an honor to take part in this wonderful event by UN Women and WECF. First, I'd like to talk about Biznesek, or it's an individual social responsibility work for gender equality. With this work, I aim to counter the negative cultural prejudice on women and help free people's perspective on separatist views based on human gender and help create awareness in the objectification of women. And also I used in the video, I used some images of the women's protests from Afghanistan. By including these images, not only I wanted to emphasize giving support to those women in their for voice to be heard, but also to indicate that women's rights, human rights issues are global issues. And the reason making this song is to say that we have come too far to turn back. Women are able to think, women are able to make their choices, their own decisions about their own life. Women are able to speak, and women are able to voice their opinion. As an artist, I as an artist, I explore conversations, expressions, and seek responses for positive social change. And based on my personal experience and observations, I began reflecting on gender equality issues in my songs, adding purpose to my music, which became my activism. And in this song, I also wanted to touch issues of self-worth, knowing we need to start living our life by knowing our self-worth. And with the like living the truth of self-worth will allow us to overcome these obstacles that separates women and suppress women or enslave women with the teachings of traditions, cultural attributes, or belief systems. So, and I'm focused on the topic of living life with awareness of self-worth, because each and every one of us are valuable in our existence beyond our gender. Are we going to watch the video, or should I continue speaking?
We go into the video. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Annem beni sana kul olsun diye doğurmadı. Prensimi buldum sandım, olmadı. Boşa koydum, boş dolmadı. Doluya koydum, dolu almadı. Olmadı, almadı, o olmadı. Babam bana sana köle olsun diye can katmadı. Kaşınırım al bu al diye beni sana satmadı. Bedenim benim, mabedim, bedenim evim. Anlamadı, anlayamadı, o olmadı. Akılları fikirleri, akılları fikirleri, akılları fikirleri. Neysek, neysek, biz neysek. Akılları fikirleri, akılları fikirleri, akılları fikirleri. Neysek, neysek, biz neysek. Akılları fikirleri, akılları fikirleri, akılları fikirleri. Neysek, neysek, biz neysek. Akılları fikirleri, akılları fikirleri, akılları fikirleri. Neysek, neysek, biz neysek. Yapboz hayat hep bir merak, bir bilmece. Her şey güzellik değil, benim ruhum yüce. Eteğim kısa, hey kime ne? Başörtüm var, ona ne? Kime ne? Ona ne? Kime ne? Tek söz sahibiyim nefsimde, ben nefesimde. Kontrol bende, geleceğim özgür seçimimde. Bedenim benim, mabedim, bedenim evim. Ona ne? Kime ne? Ona ne? Akılları fikirleri, akılları fikirleri, akılları fikirleri. Neysek, neysek, biz neysek. Akılları fikirleri, akılları fikirleri, akılları fikirleri. Neysek, neysek, biz neysek. Akılları fikirleri, akılları fikirleri, akılları fikirleri. Neysek, neysek, biz neysek. Akılları fikirleri, akılları fikirleri, akılları fikirleri. Neysek, neysek, biz neysek. Evrene çok eklen 18 bin alem. Yoksun varsın sonra tekrar yoksun. Adem ile Havva'dan yaratılış hikayem. Hem dişi hem bilir kişi, hem de hem feminin o yapar işi. Hadi hadi kuzum, hadi hadi büyü büyü. Hadi hadi kuzum, hadi başın dik yürü. Hadi hadi kuzum, hadi. Akılları fikirleri, akılları fikirleri, akılları fikirleri. Neysek, neysek, ne biz neysek. Akılları fikirleri, akılları fikirleri, akılları fikirleri. Neysek. Neysek biz neysek.
Yes. When I remember when I first came out to the music scene, like 20 years ago, the theme of one of my songs was considered controversial. Kuşu Kalkmaz, a story of two women who have accepted a life in codependency to a man with having no other options. For some, this song was considered to be fearless in challenging the status quo, and for others who were comfortable in living in male-dominant society, it was questioning a male behavior was a big no-no. A woman can exhibit her naked body, but a woman cannot own her body. A woman is accepted and rewarded living her life as a sexual object, but condemned as a sexual being. Also, I was interested in pointing out the prevalence of domestic violence in the song. Many women today, face on a daily basis. Well, the song, the banning of the song was a disappointment for me, but this disappointment may have slowed down my production process, but it didn't stop me from my commitment making music for women's rights and gender equality. Like the rest of you here, I'm here today to help make difference and to help make the world a better place for all of us. Having to live a life, I mean, many girls today are being born into a life not having to explore their full potential in creativity, sports, art, science, not having a say about their own future because of the gender inequality. We don't talk enough about the psychological issue, psychological abuse that women and girls have been facing since birth as a devalued gender. Being devalued at birth, having lack of self-worth is a deep wound. A wound that separates women working hand in hand in solidarity. It's difficult to grow up in an environment where the traditional roles are set for women, like don't do that, don't wear that, don't speak, don't laugh, wear this, wear that, sit there, walk back, don't think the way I say so. Like these kind of behaviors cannot be considered as traditional or cultural attributes. It is always easy to spot a physical abuse with obvious bruises or broken bones, but it is difficult to see the psychological abuse, which has its deeper wounds and leaves deep scars in women's lives. These are the real issues that we need to talk about for our girls to have their individual rights for evolvement and involvement in their life. Also, we see often crimes against women not receiving harsh penalties that they should get. I mean, many men receive reduction on their penalties or walk out freely for the crimes against women. And this almost shows a ratification of this non-spoken issue of women living their lives as a devalued gender.
Sultana, you're so right. The issue of self-worth is such an integral part of how we grow up, and the lack of it is also a very big part of how patriarchy sustains itself. Thank you so much for touching on this, both in your song. Could we also hear a poem of yours?
Oh, yes.
Write poems.
Love to. I would like to recite this poem first from a song called Nafada. Hey, people, rise above the hateful lies. Generation after generation, disengage, fatal attraction. Everything around is corrupt. Tales of villains, Dylans killing in the land of living. In rebellion to biblical kingdom, in freedom I rise. Who exercise control? Who's God? Who's human? What's a man? What's a woman? Why can't I be the Pope, Rabbi, or the Imam? Yeah, that's right, Mom. I'm the woman. I've been childbearing, child caring, child raising for your satisfaction. Even I've been kuma sharing, been in servitude long, harassed on, oppressed on, domesticated, violated, mutilated, underpaid, undermined, yet refined in marriage. That's how I've been defined. Been doing fine, cheering from the sideline. I've been doing fine. Nafada for nafaka, I've been doing fine. Now is the time. Wake up, sister, wake up, be awake. Medieval mystics burned at stake. Sharia law stones to death beyond denial. In my ongoing saga, I am Eva, Shiva Nua. I am the Mother Earth, Moon, Sun. I am divine power.
So powerful. Thank you for these strong words. And thank you for using feminist words and feminist ideals in your art so passionately. Artivism is art, and activism through art is such a important part of the feminist movement, and in the really tough, really draining struggle that we all are towards gender equality. It's something that really holds us very strongly close to each other. Maybe we have a time for another poem, if you would want to share another one with us.
Sure. This poem I wrote many years ago, and it's, I'm gonna read it. It was in sync in the March 8th International Women's Day spirit. And it seems like still valid, all that subject. Well, okay, legacy begins. Her story, no more his story. Materialistic mood swings, psychologically impeded psychoanalysis, metamorphosis of she came a long way. Still he pimps her in a strong way. Persuaded thousands of years with reflected beliefs of female creation for male egotistic needs. Living with Eve's guilt of apple treats to Adam, but Madam accessoire existence. Homemaking skills to home breaking, sexual awakening after faking for years. Delinquent matters like committed relationships that sink, he still pimps, as in naked she's on the cover of magazines, as in shaken ass she's in the video scenes, as in sweet teens, younglings, Far Eastern babes, nightclub baits for miserable missionary dates, as in tribal she's carrying the load, being sold for an exchange to a goat. So the story is told. Identity reveals with realization, through prophetical manifestation, material gains in this material world, silicone sex dolls in the state of being material girls. As yet, the word is gender genocide. This is my poem. Thank you. Well, we are in a stage where we have fast advanced technology, yet very slow in making progress with human behavior. Like advanced in technology, yet slow in making progress with gender equality. We need to disrupt gender norms that keep women and girls from realizing their full potential. I mean, how much longer can we hold on to those traditions that no longer serves us well? That traditions of keeping girls and women down, stripping girls from their education, violating bodies, keeping them behind veils, stealing their lives by allowing child marriages and such. And I mean, the list goes on.
Thank you so much. Oh, sorry.
I just, I mean, I was gonna make a point of, I mean, feminists have been committed to work hard in this, to create a balanced world. And all the issues, well, most of the issues from last century are still, we're still working on it today. And I believe that when we have more women involved in politics and taking chairs in government, you know, and having the power to change around, and this world definitely needs a woman's compassionate action, touch of women's compassion. And with this compassionate action, we can change consciousness. And I hope that we just, you know, in the near future, we also see more than 20% of women leaders in like meetings like G7 meetings and etc.
Thank you so much for being a part of this change and putting your words and art to the use of to the struggle of gender equality. As you've said, we've come certainly too far to go back, and yes, we have the solidarity, strength, and the passion to make sure that we go forward. And this Generation Equality Forum process and action coalitions are the methodologies that we're hoping to further this through. Thank you so much, Sultana, for sharing your art with us. And we'll be hearing more from you in a few minutes as well with our panelists. Thank you so much once again. With these strong and inspirational words, I'd like to move on to the next section of our agenda, where we would like to hear, or rather see, due to this digital virtual realm we're in, the ideas and priorities from our participants in this conversation for the commitments to generation equality and action coalitions processes. For this, we'll be using a separate tool. We'll be using something called a Mentimeter. If I could ask our colleagues to put up the Mentimeter slide on the screen. Thank you. So what we would want to, we'll be collecting your ideas and your thoughts on this Mentimeter. So what we would want you to do is to go to the web address you see there, which is www.menti.com. And a screen will pop up and it will ask you to enter a passcode numbers. So you would need to enter 8964-6407. You can also find this information in chat. Our colleagues have already put it in. And you'll be prompted to answer 2 questions. First of all, what do you think are the challenges we face? And the second one will be what collective actions we should make to overcome these challenges and make generation equality processes a success. But you'll first be prompted to answer the first one, and there'll be some time for you to answer, and then the second one will come up, and then we'll look into the answers all together to see what we think are the biggest challenges that we're facing and what collective actions we believe are necessary to make generation equality process a success. Just as a reminder, the website is also on the chat that you can see. You would need to go to www.menti.com and then use the code 8964-6407. and then we'll create two incredible word clouds together that reflects our challenges and our priorities.
Yeah, I can already see some great responses coming in.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sane. I'm so excited to see them and a little impatient.
I think I should be able to share the screen so we can all see it. Can everyone see all the results?
Yes, they're coming in. Thank you, Sane. What are the biggest challenges for women's rights and gender equality? We have reluctance of men, sexism and patriarchy, access to resources, which the generation equality process is also hoping to address, awareness, rights being ignored, economic empowerment, accepting women as equals, prejudices and stereotypes. The need to keep going and fighting. Right and center pushback, something we are talking also including in our region. These are really big challenges to come up, but the feminist movement over decades have worked tirelessly to come over so many challenges. So for the hope and inspiration, Sane, maybe we can go to the second question, if possible. What collective actions should we take then to make the generation equality process a success? The Generation Equality campaign is important, in my opinion, exactly because it gives so much emphasis on going forward on gender equality, on the rights of women and girls. So what do we need? What collective actions we need to make sure that this progress is possible, that our futures will be one of gender equality and enjoyment and exercise of rights of women, human rights of women and girls. So we need proper education. We need to engage beyond our bubbles, definitely. And for that, we need all of your support. We need dialogue and solidarity. We need to get together to be strong. We need to change the norms through proper education, through inclusion and diversity, and definitely through support to feminist groups, with feminist movement-building, with feminist funding, feminist organizing. We need more women in government, as have been told both by Sultana before and as you've heard in the bio of our parliamentarian as well. We need to change belief systems, definitely. I want to ask if anybody would feel strong enough at this point to maybe explain why they've written what they've written. You could use the raise hand function, and we could take maybe two answers from our participants. If you would want to explain more in detail why you've participated with these words.
Oh.
And I'll keep on reading meanwhile, if that's okay. We need to change the form of education. Our education systems are really based on what the society reflects. So if we want to change the norms, we need a different form of education. We need an inclusive feminist movement, definitely. If we don't hear our diversities and intersectionalities, how will we be able to challenge the uniformity the society is trying to protect? And I see Anke Stock has her hands up. Can we unmute Anke? Oh, great.
Yes, hello. I did it myself, the unmuting. Great to see you all, and thank you very much for this beautiful song. And I even more like the beautiful poems. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Amazing. I put as a major challenge the right and center pushback, and I have to say, well, I mean, I'm based in Germany, and you would think it's not such an issue, or I'm working on the issue, and so you experience this in that way. But actually, we had this football game last night here, Germany against Hungary, and the city of Munich decided to have the arena where the football game took place in the diversity colors illuminated. And actually it was the UEFA, the United, I don't know, the abbreviation, the football association that forbid to illuminate the arena in the diversity colors. And I think this is just outrageous, and it shows it's not a right pushback, it is moving to the center, and that's what is worrying me a lot. And yeah, it comes all quite close and seems to be mainstream, and this is something which we really need to be aware of and be more agile, aware about it.
Thank you so much, Anke. It is really worrying to see that this fear of diversity and inclusion being spread in spite of everything we've been trying to do and trying to build over the past decades. Thank you so much. And this is definitely something that our collective actions in the generation equality process should address to. And I can read Sane's comment on the chat that this example also shows the power of these kinds of institutions and companies sharing these anti-gender statements, even though they claim that it's not an anti-gender statement. Thank you so much. And I see Fatma. Maybe we can also hear from Fatma and then move to the conversation section. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well. Welcome, Fatma.
Thank you. So I was the one who added an inclusive feminist movement to my answer. And briefly to say why I did that is because I believe we have today too many strands of feminist thoughts, and it would be great that one time we collectively understand that feminism and gender inequality is for everyone. We're all in this together, and it's time to understand the needs of all women all over the world. It's time to include the youth, the disabled, the feminist movement, and understand that it is relative according to regions, but we also need a transnational movement that collect all efforts. We need a collective movement together.
Thank you so much, Fatima, for these important points. Also to mention that we also need to start, as we say in the sustainable development process as well, with the groups that are more marginalized to make sure that we don't leave them behind. Thank you so much, both to Anke and Fatima for their points. And now, we come to the part that also excites me a lot to hear the reflections of our panelists to these strong commitments, strong collective actions to the road ahead. But I want to start with a question that's actually very close to my heart, and I love hearing the answer of this from every feminist that I come to, because it shows our diversity and it shows our strength in the face of the societies that we build. So I want to ask to all our panelists, how did your feminist journey start? How did it evolve and how did it shape where you are now? And maybe we could start with Alia for this question. If you could share with us, Alia.
Hi, Shahnaz, and good afternoon to everyone. Good evening, wherever you are. Interesting. I have answered this question before, and I think it's an answer that continues to evolve, because I think it is a continuing journey. I think we continue to discover our feminism, right? But I would say that those of us who are very fortunate, and I count myself among them, don't always understand how much of a lottery life is. And what we get born into, we take so much for granted. And I think my realization, what I thought was the norm, that is not the norm, came about when I started to understand the larger cultural context. So going outside of my immediate family, going to the extended family. And I would say that it started really with my father, because I saw that whether he will admit it or not, he is indeed a feminist, because he made very different choices from the rest of his family. He did not think that it was such a disaster that he doesn't have any boys and he has 4 girls. It's something that he celebrated, and he always made us feel that we can do anything that we put our mind to, that we have a right to an education. I mean, I didn't even question it, right? This is what I'm saying. I think, and it really is a lottery, because if I had been the daughter of one of my uncles, it would be a very different story. I wouldn't be here today, that's for sure. So I think it's that moment of realization. And maybe as I was growing up, and he had given me, or he had enabled this space around me to think for myself and to sort of claim rights even and push the envelope. And I was maybe frustrated with some of the restrictions that he was putting. And I was thinking, like, I'm really fighting for my rights. But I think there is this realization of, oh my goodness, what I think of as restrictions is so much bigger than what other girls and women experience because of what they are born into. But it doesn't mean that my struggle is any less, or it's part of the same struggle, I would say. And I think another thing that came to my mind, and I've been reflecting a lot on lately, is Sultana, your song sort of sparked this kind of realization that this how important cultural identity is also in terms of the feminism or feminisms. And when you feel comfortable living, as myself, I've moved, I'm one of these women on the move throughout my life. Mm-hmm. And being sort of Eastern and Western and and it's a struggle in terms of, like, if you go from one, you're kind of judged by the other regardless. And I think that not enough is spoken about this as well, because sometimes you're trying to, and when we talk about, and I put the solidarity and dialogue, that we really need to understand, not to be cornered, that we actually need to find the commonalities. And because I think there are parts of the feminist movement that are trying to impose maybe a discourse on others. And I think whichever way the spectrum is, I think that that's problematic. And a lot of people get caught in this and therefore disengage from the dialogue because they feel like they're trying to be put into a box. And I think that that is really to our detriment. So I would just maybe stop there to allow others, but it's really been something that has been thinking. So the journey continues very much.
Thank you so much for sharing these so openly and from the heart. Feminism is really about, for me as well, evolving and changing and questioning, and it's a journey. Thank you. Maybe I can give the floor to Zenia now. What has been your feminist journey like, Zenia?
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm happy to be here today with you and share our experiences. And regarding this question of my personal interest in the topic of feminism, I think it instigated some 10 years ago when I was in my early 30s. And this situation, it was caused by my life experience, notably with the experience of becoming a mother which turned me quite surprisingly. It turned to be a challenging and highly emotional task for me. And I was upset with this discrepancy between the public image of happy motherhood and the real life struggles and fears and worries and doubts. And to solve, or rather to smooth these worries, I began searching for explanation of the nature of these discrepancies. And that eventually led me to feminist theories and debates. And I dug deeper into the feminist topics, and I came across some online interviews and articles written by the feminists from the post-Soviet space. And then I discovered that there were Kazakhstani activists too. So I began following them on the internet, on social media sites like Facebook, and I began delving more deeply into these debates and theories. And it all led to myself enrolling in the Nazarbayev University to pursue a master's degree at my age of 35, 36, I think. And the topic of my future debate came very quickly. I decided to dedicate it to the local feminisms. And while I was preparing this paper, I conducted a field work, and I interviewed some of these, prominent and outspoken feminists, which I was, only following on social media. And also I had an opportunity to present my research topic to the International Scientific Conference, where I was introduced both to local activists and international or regional gender researchers and scholars. And so in 2018, I defended my thesis called Feminisms in Kazakhstan on the intersection of global influences and local contexts. And what I was trying to deliver in my thesis, it was that the contemporary feminisms in Kazakhstan, and I think I can speak more broadly for the region, for the entire region of Central Asia, we're now in the process of elaboration of a fluid yet distinctive, locally grounded feminisms, sensitive to the region's complex histories and geopolitics, and being particularly empathetic, or as Sultana said, compassionate to local women's identities and necessities in all our multiplicity and diversity. It was me who actually wrote on your questionnaire about diversity and inclusion, because that's all what we need, and that's something that we all strive for. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zenia. Thank you so much. We'll come back to you for the regional question of it as well. So your locally based feminism ideas, we really want to listen to further. Can I go to now Miss Nino Slosani, and I'm sorry for stuttering there for a moment. I hope it would be all right, Nino, as a feminist. So can I ask the same question? What has been your feminist journey like? How did it evolve?
Thank you. Thank you for the possibility to be a part of this very good feminist platform. And I would begin with the headline that we women have to be brave, patient, and emotionally strong. And I will tell you a bit about my personal experience, which I gathered in the public politics. I was a freshman in 2016, and now I'm a second convocation MP. And I assure that women need extra skills to survive in this severe atmosphere. We are minorities, where we are stigmatized, where we have kids to take care, dinner to cook, and home to look after. And more globally, women in my country, we are educated specifically. No technical skills, no publicity, and no expectations on our success or career achievements. This obviously constructs us to be less active and with concrete interests. But as more things has been changed, we get used to think that no more borders in our perspectives. And here we are in all sectors, in all directions. But the real problem is that we do not have critical amount of women, and women do not set game rules. And we have to operate in very aggressive, masculine, and tough rules, where sometimes we even need to, when sometimes I even needed to raise my voice to be heard, where I was discussed as just the pretty one, and where I had where I had fear that my kids will watch TV where terrible things may be shown about me, and where we do not have many rights, and where men make the politics, which often just aims just to have results and ignoring the process, inclusivity, and equality. As this conference aims to strengthen and empower women, to share my most sure rule, which I learned in politics. I want to say to all women that we should be emotionally strong and consistent, because there are everyday frustrations that majority do not change anything and violates good ideas, that nothing moves forward and our fight for better reality is in vain. But meanwhile, until we stay in the process, when we are very constant, little by little, we change the environment. Our existence changes and sets new standards. Meanwhile, other women, NGOs, civil society stands by you and empowers you. Meanwhile, women became more solidar and supportive to each other and do not fight with you, but support you. Meanwhile, the mentality transforms and the environment becomes friendly to you. On the same page, I want to highlight the role of the civil sector and donor organizations, which supported gender equality and women empowerment constantly and delivered technical, professional, financial assistance for us, joining our aspiration to deliver certain goals.
Thank you so much.
At this time,
Thank you so much. Maybe
at this time, I
about
represent
the specific work done in Georgia, and that will be so valuable for us to hear. But that is exactly my second question to you. So if we could finish the first questions, and then in the second questions we can come to that point. And thank you so much for sharing these. Now I want to ask Sultana, but Sultana, I would want to connect your two questions together, if that's all right, because I'm going to ask both about how you came to your feminist journey, but as well as your vision for a feminist generation equal future. So maybe if you could answer these in the continuum that time is,
yeah, I'd love
to.
You know, I was born in a conservative city, surrounded by women whose lives were influenced, controlled, or suppressed by men. Women who were not allowed to have education or a career. I saw the social injustice based on gender at a very young age. And in my life, it's been me, my existence been to stand against these cliches of womanhood, challenging the norms of conditioning of women. And coming from a traditional Anatolian family, my parents didn't place much importance in me getting a college education. They thought I'd marry off the best suitor they find, you know, their approval of, and I'll be happy as wife and a mother. But that didn't happen. So I am actually thankful to my parents though, because they did not force this plan on me, and they allowed me to go my way and let me become the person who I am today. But not every girl is lucky this way. I saw my sisters, my friends are being pushed into these arranged marriages, and which really left unpleasant memories in me. And when I grew up, and when I went on to venture out the world, like Aliyah, I also moved around. I lived in different cultures, and I did this for myself. Yes, I could change my life, but then, as an artist, I thought I want to share my experience. I want to share my views of life, what I have experienced. Maybe shed some light on the other people's, and these girls, that they may get inspired in their life. So that's how I became making my music and in the women's rights issues. For the future, I think when we look at the last century, there's really not much to add what Simone de Beauvoir said. All the issues are here valid. Yes, there is advancement, there is change, but it is slow. And I am questioning why this is slow. And I come up with my own answers of, I think, women being divided. Would it be suffice to say that Napoleon technique of keeping women separate? They're women, again, going back to these self-worth issues. Many women search their lives, finding their self-value, and this search frequently ends up them being in a supportive roles to men. Early career moves. They're all supporting roles to a man, like a secretary or nurse, or a cheerleader cheering for the star team player. I think when we, as women, keep that dialogue and show each other love and do not discriminate against each other, we can move forward, take a step forward. Traveling different cultures, I did see is women's issues not only an issue here in these traditional cultures, but also in the most advanced cultures. There are huge issues, women's issues. It may not be the same, they may not going through what we're going through here, but there are still issues out there are not resolved. And women living most places, women are secondary. Yes, we have women in politics, but it seems like today most of the women in politics are speaking through a man's mouth, speaking through a man's mind, as if brainwashed by a man. We actually need leaders, political leaders, who will deal with the real issues. And just looking at all over the world, what the male heavy politics have brought, finding solutions to conflicts with an end result of violence, destruction, and chaos. And from such wars, we see women and children are the most harmed. We see this in these refugee camps every day. I hate seeing these news of this devastating situation. And we all know that we can change things around. So there's enough sources for everybody. And artists have been doing their individual input. This is wonderful. We have songs are sung, poems are written, films are made, books are written, and I think it is time to take action, a compassionate action.
The compassionate action is
compassionate action, yes, embracing all the women at the same time.
Thank you. In all our diversities, as you said, embracing us and allowing us to make our own decisions and feeling our self-worth. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank
for
you.
these. And I want to thank then I was a 17-year-old in Turkey when your first song came up. And I remember how I feel, oh my goodness, yes, that I can yell from the rooftops the hypocrisy on it. So thank you so much for giving that strength with your
Thank
art
you.
to us.
Thank you, Shaynaz.
Thank you. I would want to go to Zenia now and ask her about what's the importance of the intersectionalities in furthering women's human rights and gender equality in Central Asia, and what might be some of the tools perhaps, such as gender quotas, which we know is both an important issue, but also a contested issue, but also other tools that are necessary for the region from your perspective.
Thank you for your question. There are many issues within our region, and one of them is our under representation and low level of involvement in such international global events and platforms as we see, for instance, we will see, for instance, in several days when we will see, the Paris Forum. We need to be more involved, and we need to be heard as activists, as feminists, as human rights defenders, etc. We need to be represented and heard on, this level, on this stage, because nowadays, while speaking about the Generation Equality Forum, we can see that, the coverage and the coverage of this event and the involvement of our civil society, non-profit organizations and activists is quite low. Now, as Fimagora, we promote the forum among our regional network of activists and NGOs and groups and initiatives as an opportunity to make their voices heard, because we, as Central Asia, we represent a huge region, very diverse, very interesting, with a long history of feminist and women's movement working here successfully since I think mid-1980s, as a full-fledged feminist organizations, for instance. And we have to become full participants of this process, and we need to be a part of designing of such platforms, for instance, like the Generation Equality Forum, because such important decisions on the design of such events and further decisions regarding equality and women's rights should not be taken without us, without our perspectives, without our expertise and knowledge. As we can see now, this forum in Paris will be held only in 3 languages, in English, French, and Spanish. And it excludes a vast majority of potential participants from our regions, where people mostly master their own local languages and use Russian as a lingua franca. So basically, many people, they just cannot register. And even if they will register, they will not be able to understand the very important speeches and discussions during the forum. And that's our point, that this time we need to be registered, and maybe this will influence our future involvement in such global events and platforms. So we will be invited and we will participate together, and we will be included in such global and regional events.
Thank you so much, Ksenia. Also talking about language justice and how important it is for inclusion, as well as the need to be in decision-making spaces.
Absolutely.
To overcome the structural barriers a little bit closer through quotas and addressing also violence against women politicians, like Nina was mentioning, that we see is more severe than any type of violence or attacks male politicians are facing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now I can go to Nino to ask about what is the priority for Georgia for the next 4 years in accordance with the generation equality processes, and what would be the role of the feminist movements in this process?
Yes, thank you. Once more, I will tell a little bit about Gender Equality Council. But first of all, I will name several most important things we have done during these years. We have ratified Istanbul Convention, which aims to coordinate government efforts against domestic violence and violence against women. We have adopted the sexual harassment amendments, which was very important in our reality and in every country, I guess. We have adopted gender quotas for parliamentary and local elections. We are 20% and by 2028, we will have 30% women's participation in parliament. This will be for sure. And for the next steps, we are going to monitor Istanbul Convention ratification process, whether all the whether legislation covers all the amendments that we have ratified in the Istanbul Convention. Also, we are working on the women's empowerment policy document. And during your questions, a lot of women told that women really need to be strong financially and economically. And it is the basis where we can fight against violence, and we can invite women in politics if these women are economically strong. So we want to draft this concept note where we will look through a long-lasting period what the government should do to empower women, and what is our strategy. The Gender Equality Council of the Parliament also works to institutionalize GIA, Gender Impact Assessment. This is very powerful instrument which we are working with, that we monitor all the legislative amendments and initiatives, what kind of impact it would have on each gender. And we have already done gender impact assessment on the parliamentary budget, and we aim to begin this budget monitoring of the central budget or different programs. And we are beginning very tight coordination with the local municipality gender councils. Their women and all their participants really need to be empowered by the central parliament. And we, from the next year, we begin permanent platform working with them to set new goals, to help them with the action plans, to help them how to fulfill these goals and these action plans, and it's very important. Also, we have already prepared the new version of state concept of the gender equality and the law of gender equality, where all new trends and gender mainstreaming will be reflected in these documents. Nowadays, we have very old one, and it's really important. Also, we are leading several thematic inquiries in many important topics, and many very interesting things.
Thank you so much. These all sound very important, and we wish you all the best in the parliament to make sure that these become a reality for Georgia as well. I want to be facilitating and giving the floor to our speakers as much as possible, but I have to say this because Nino mentioned the Istanbul Convention, which is a very important tool for our region. And as a feminist originally from Turkey, I just want to say that it's very concerning that Istanbul Convention will stop being in effect for Turkey in the next 5 days if the government doesn't withdraw their withdrawal from the convention. So we really hope that the convention can really stay in effect for Turkey as well, as it's such an important international tool for all of us. And lastly, I would like to ask Alia, as UN Women, what's your institutional commitment to Generation Equality Forum and the Action Coalitions and the next 4 years ahead?
Thank you, Shehnaz. I will speak, in terms of not just myself, but the whole team that has been involved in the engagement on generation equality in the region. And I think, of course, we follow the thinking of our headquarters who have been in the driving seat of this process, but also mindful of the difference sometimes between the intention and then how it manifests. And as Ksenia has very much highlighted, we also, would have hoped that the process would have been more inclusive in the sense of even accessibility in terms of language, etc. So I think what I would say is that we will stay true to the spirit of what generation equality is all about. I don't think we should think of it as an event or just kind of, it's either this coalition or nothing else. It's like, this is another vehicle, but we have so many possible vehicles to push the agenda forward. So it's just, I think what we're trying to do through generation equality is to revitalize interest in this agenda and get more people involved, get kind of the commitments going again. It's wonderful to hear, and I know, of course, I'm very aware of the amazing work that's being done in Georgia and in other countries in the region. Governments are making, I know, Shehnaz, that you're very touched by what has happened recently in Turkey, which is a setback, but there are also many things that are moving in the right direction. So I think it really is about getting these actions highlighted, supported, moved forward, and held accountable, so for me, it's about not just talking the talk and not just setting out the objectives, but really holding to account that we are actually moving in the right direction. And I loved what Sultana said about compassionate action. So I loved that. And I think, so for me, if I'm taking something away and if I say, what is our commitment? Our commitment is to continue to listen, share, work with others, to demand, lead, and act with compassion. And try to get an understanding. I think, and it really is about that there is diversity of views, even within the feminist movement. But I feel like sometimes it can implode. Because then the focus is on the differences rather than those areas where, we amongst ourselves, we can say, okay, here's where there's no consensus, but there is consensus on certain areas, and we need to all be pushing in the same direction, because there are actors out there who are going to capitalize on any discord that is picked up within the movement, So I think that's where we really need to draw a red line. And for me, that's what generation equality is all about. And I hope that we can reach that we're able to say, okay, we might not agree on everything across the spectrum, but there are basics that we agree on, and we need to all collectively, we can find avenues and processes in which we can open up and air the differences and better understand each other and deal with each other with compassion, about the differences of opinion and understanding where the opinions don't meet. And I'm not talking about this, just to clarify, as UN versus civil society versus government. I'm really talking about the spectrum there, of course, there will be limitations. There will be limitations for what a UN agency can do. There will be limitations to what a government can do. There will be limitations to what certain civil society organizations can do. But I think if the whole point is that we need to leverage the whole spectrum of the ecosystem to say, okay, this is how we can amplify and accelerate if we at least are on the same page or better understand where we are headed. So I think that for me is really important. The actions in the action coalitions, they are a roadmap. It's not like something hugely different. It's in terms of what the demands are. They've been there for so long, but it's about creating that appeal, getting others on board. And I think that's what is really important. So we have to be inclusive rather than exclusive, even if we're clear in terms of what the position is. But yeah, find those connections. That for me would be the commitment from the team here in Europe and Central Asia. And Xenia, we will continue our advocacy efforts for moving forward. Anything that UN Women does at a global level, or the UN system, has to be more inclusive in terms of languages. I fully agree with you on that, because how can you have a dialogue and a conversation if you're not speaking or understanding what is being said? Thank you so much. Back to you, Shahnaz.
Thank you so much, Alia. And that feeling of being together, especially when we're facing such a big pushback, is really important, to join in connections that we have with each other and be in compassionate action, as Sultana and you have mentioned. Thank you so much. Now we come to the question and answer session portion of our conversation. And I'd like to ask, I see that there's one question from Saneh. How do we ensure that all organizations, companies, governments are held accountable for the commitments they make? This is a great question that I should give to maybe first Alia, and then we can go with the other speakers.
Thank you so much. Since this is a safe space, right? So we can be very good. I think here is, I think when the journey for generation equality started, it wasn't exactly clear where it was going to end up and who is going to be on board and who is going to kind of take it forward and hold the framework of accountability. And I think it still is something that is being worked on. So it's not something that is owned by one entity or one kind of part of this equation. The mechanism that has been set up to conceptualize generation equality in terms of the forum and the action coalitions in particular will have to do that work in terms of, okay, how do you build an accountability mechanism that is meaningful? Because I think what we're seeing is, and the commitments are only now sort of like trickling through, right? That some of the commitments are stronger than others, right? But at the same time, you don't want to, what I've understood is that if you, there's always like a trade-off. If you set the bar too high, then those who are trying to kind of grapple with like the newcomers, so not the usual suspects, but those governments, companies, and others who we really need to make these commitments, who might be kind of hesitant, might drop off if you make it overly ambitious, so that their journey is just beginning. So I think that they're trying to calibrate this a little bit. So it's not a one size fits all. The accountability mechanism, what it will look like, is not yet clear, but it is being worked on. This is what I understand. And since this is very much a civil society-led initiative, they are really at the heart of this. And I know that it's been a difficult journey. It's been a difficult journey to kind of go through the process of who can be an action coalition leader, who can be brought on board as a commitment maker, what's a valid commitment, what isn't. So I think it's not perfect, but this is the first time something like this is being tried. So I think it's not going to be 100% kind of up to everybody's expectations, but I think that what will be important is to continue the progress in improving it. So if something is, we're not asking everybody to say, oh, everything about the forum and the action coalitions is perfect and this is the greatest initiative ever, but rather that what it's trying to do is so important. And so you need to support it and you need to help us figure out how to get it right, is what I would say. And that's why we need to be committed to being open. You know, I think some of you who are with us today are very familiar. There has been a young feminist manifesto that has come out, sort of questioning how empowering the process or not has been for young activists that we've tried to bring on board. That for us was so important because it was so eye-opening, and we've taken it and we've embedded it in what we do, and we're trying to hold ourselves now to account. We had not thought about it in this way, and now we're trying to build in sort of the thinking, the design, and also kind of to have the accountability. So I think and that's just us here. So I think when you're thinking as a global organization and with the multiple stakeholders and what will private sector accept and what will governments accept, understanding this is not strictly an intergovernmental process, right? So it's not binding in the same way that intergovernmental processes are. It's all very complex. So Sane, I would say, continue to ask the question, and hopefully each time you ask it, I will have more of an answer for you. But please keep watching the space and be interested and invested and keep asking the questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Alia. Just to note, at least from my side, even the fact that the Generation Equality Forum process sustained itself with its civil society partners, with UN Women, with its member state partners through a pandemic that comes, you know, around once a century is a vehicle to be, a commitment to be applauded to. But as you've said, the ones that are one of the most crucial parts of holding the process and the commitments to account is civil society. So maybe I can give the floor to Zenia now to answer this question.
Thank you. This is exactly what I wanted to add. You know, this civil society oriented perspective and putting the civil society, its efforts and its passion into the core of all these actions. I think this is one of the possible solutions and ideas of how other commitment makers should be accounted for what they're doing, for what they committed for. So as we know, as for now, we have 3 civil society organizations from Central Asia which committed themselves and engaged into the action coalitions. This is the Ecological Association of Rural Women, ALHA from Kyrgyzstan, and they are one of the leaders of Action Coalition 4 on feminist action for climate justice, and also 2 CSOs, commitment makers. It's a public organization, NASL from Tajikistan, and we, the Femagora Central Asia from Kazakhstan. And I have to add that also so far, there are 2 Central Asian states, Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, who are the commitment makers now. Kazakhstan is committed to Action Coalitions 1 and 2, and Uzbekistan to 3 first action coalitions. So it's a huge path ahead in front of all of us, in front of our governments, and in front of NGOs. As Alia said, it's an ongoing process, and maybe we will still see other Central Asian states and NGOs and organizations, private companies, etc., jumping on board and also committing to something, because it's really important. And as you said, to make this commitment, to think about this, to become aware and responsible for advancing gender equality, for promoting women's rights, and working on these extremely important themes of these action coalitions. So yes, and I just reiterate that putting the civil society into the center, and youth and young feminist organizations, girl-led organizations, into the core of this, being responsible and being and seeing what is going on, and maybe adjusting the efforts of other participants. This is one of the most, I think, important and game-changing sides of this Action Coalition Forum, Action Coalitions and Generation Equality Forum.
Thank you so much, Zenia. Yes, you're so right. I realized the time. We actually have only 5 minutes to the end of our conversation, but would you want to continue the questions to the networking session, or would you rather go to the networking session? Is there a preference? And I know some of our panelists may have to leave in 5 minutes. So maybe if we get their last words, kind of a closing remarks for this, and then if people want to continue the discussion on accountability and the other questions that are coming up about actions, that we can talk about that a little more in a more informal setting in a networking session. I know Alia will need to leave, so can I give the floor to you for closing remarks?
Thank you so much, Shahnaz. I mean, I think that what Elsa asks is really important, and it's actually top of mind at the moment for us. So I would really, I mean, my colleague Nargis is going to continue and hopefully will be engaged in the networking sessions. I really would urge that there is a conversation about this. This is not something that we as a UN organization can push for or lead on, but we can support if there is buy-in in terms of how to do it. But we see it really important. So I fully support that, Elsa. And just to say, this has actually been really engaging. It's been wonderful to hear the other panelists, get to know you, Sultana. So it's really wonderful. And I really look forward that, I mean, I think we're all busy. We're all burnt out from living more than a year under COVID-19. We haven't been able to meet properly. I myself feel exhausted, but I find these kinds of meetings so energizing, and they kind of, again, it's kind of like they reinvigorate and they challenge you to think in new ways. And that's what I would hope from anybody who's listening in, just to think about what you've heard, engage, just reach out to others, use the networking session, keep challenging, keep moving, and keep pushing. And I love what Sultana said, just be compassionate. I think that would be part of what the actions that we should take, is to build these principles of compassion in talking with each other and working with each other. Thank you so much, Shahnaz. Thank you so much, everyone. And I apologize that I have to leave. Otherwise, I would have continued, but I have another meeting. But thank you.
Thank you so much, Alia, for this open and from the heart conversation you had with us today.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Goodbye. Nino had to leave as well. I see, I wasn't able to give concluding remarks for her, but maybe I can then move to Zenia and Sultana for their concluding remarks, and then we can still go to the more informal networking and discussion. Zenia, would you have some closing remarks?
Yes, thank you so much for inviting us, for having this important conversation. I've seen so many remarkable women around me, and the situation with COVID, and our necessity to engage with each other, in this digital format, maybe even broadened our circle, and now we can meet with people from all over the world, sharing our concerns, sharing our values, having the same ideas and the same passion for advancing gender equality and for women's rights. So basically, it's a absolutely marvelous opportunity, and I'm happy to be here and happy to talk to you afterwards, if you wish. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zenia. We've been so lucky and happy to also learn from you and your expertise from the region.
Thank you.
Can I give the floor now to Sultana?
Okay, yes, thank you, Shehnaz. I believe rewriting womanhood and the purpose of female existence for the next generation will help us to get there. Coming from such cultures like defining women like, long-haired, short-witted, keep the, baby in the belly and keep the beating on the back, there are many generations women have raised in this kind of atmosphere with the verbal abuse, psychological abuse, and these women have raised their children within this perspective. But with the efforts of many associations like yourselves, it's wonderful. I appreciate it very much. And I'm hoping that we can rewrite this womanhood. And I believe the next generations will shape a better future for all of us, Thank you. Thank you. So pleased to meet you all.
Wonderful to have had you in this meeting and hear your strong words and song. Thank you so much, Sultana, for joining us. We will be going to the networking session, but for us to be able to be in more dialogue with each other, we'll have our attendees become panelists as well. So could we ask our technical colleagues to help us with that? And then I'll stop facilitating and try to ensure that this is a more open space where we can all share.
Yes, I see more people coming into.
And I really have to say that this conversation has been so enriching and so wonderful, exactly because everyone has been so open and so from the heart, from a feminist perspective, we could talk and be together. Thank you all so much for this. And I see that our participants are also here. If you want to...
Should I leave? Can
I? Sultana, you're welcome to stay in the networking session if you would want to. We would be happy, of course, but we very much understand if you have other responsibilities you need to run to.
No, I can. This is my first experience with Zoom, so I'm really trying to figure out.
No, you've been wonderful, and this is more like think about this as the coffee break of our normal physical meetings, where we can get to know each other more and talk.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I'm just gonna go ahead and leave you to it. Again, thank you so much for having me, and you all have a wonderful day. And thanks for all your wonderful works and efforts on making a positive change.
Thank you, Sultana.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.
Oh, can we take a photo actually before we leave? Before you leave?
How? What kind of
so we would
I can do that if you stay.
Sorry, yeah, we can ask everyone to show their cameras if you're comfortable doing that, so we can all see you physically as well on screen. If you're not comfortable doing that, that's also okay, but it would be nice to see your faces and say hello. So you click video on the bottom, that should be possible. I don't see anything changing right now. Yeah, I see some people appearing. That's great. Nice to see you.
Great seeing you, and thank you so much for listening and joining us. Hello, Fatima.
Great.
Great. I'm taking the first picture. We have 2 pages, so please bear with me. 1, 2, 3, feminists.
Yes.
And then once again, let me open this. 1, 2, 3, feminists.
Yay.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, Susanna, for staying this
Thank you.
portion.
Thank you. Okay, have a great day. Bye.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Yeah, so thanks everyone for continuing to stay with us. It would be great to hear from you. Maybe anyone wants to share about some of the commitments that you wrote in the word cloud that we shared earlier.